Hello, my name is Brock, and I'm going to be talking to you about the research I did within children. I looked at physical activity and academic success. Obviously, no disclosures to disclose, nothing of relation or benefit. So, diving into my background, why I chose this topic. So, I decided to present on children first of all because of an experience I actually had pretty influential here while at Loyola. Um, I had the opportunity to go out into the community in Chicago public schools and actually see what some of these children are experiencing every day with relation to physical activity and education, nutrition, and it's kind of heartbreaking to realize that a lot of the children don't necessarily have the education or even time to exercise. And when administration looks at cutting funding or opening up resources to other opportunities, I think physical activity or physical education is one of the things early to go. And you know, an example would be, maybe they don't have a gymnasium, so they don't get the adequate time outside for recess if there was a rain day or something. So, childhood obesity, I looked at children mainly between ages of 6 to 11, and unfortunately, their obesity rates have doubled within the last 30 years, and even more so, the phenomenon is kind of projected to continue growing as children become less and less physically active. If we even look at like adolescents or teens right now, their rates are almost tripled. It's a little heartbreaking. Looking at the age group of 6 to 11-year-old children, a couple cognitive milestones, if we take a look at them more psychologically, we can see that they start to develop a sense of judgment from peers, kind of realizing maybe the view of themselves isn't the same as what their peers view them as, and they start to begin defining what is appropriate for them, what is comfortable, kind of developing like their own independence per se. Throughout my research, I used a 60-minute-a-day physical activity daily guideline. This was provided through the U.S. Department of Human Health Services. So diving into the introduction, the problem that I saw was that society is progressing downwards with physical activity, especially within these children. And the purpose of this study was to examine the relationship between physical activity and academic success. So my design here, as you can see, really looked at measuring academic success using this equation that I actually created to analyze it, and dividing the two groups up, one experimental and one control group. Each one had about 15 children. I'll kind of dive into the methods here in a minute, but the real question was, does physical activity affect children's academic success? So I chose 30 children from an urban school, divide them into two groups. We had the more sedentary children. They were used as my control group. They were the ones who did not complete any physical activity outside of their activities of daily living. And then we had the experimental group, the group that did complete aerobic and muscular strengthening activities that were of moderate or greater intensity. Academic success, like I said, was measured through an equation, and the equation looked at three weighted components. Time frame was over 8 weeks. The first component being student participation. So it looked at how much they participated in class, and was given a scale of 0 through 3. 0 being no participation in class, and 3 being that it did actively participate in class. Homework completion in math, science, and reading was another component, and similarly, 0 did not complete homework, or 3 completed all homework assigned in the subjects. And lastly, student grades. Utilizing a GPA system unweighted on a 4.0 scale. I realize in schools they probably don't have GPAs. However, realizing 100% completion or getting everything right would be like a 4.0 or similar to an A. The instruments, so the study measures I used was a SurveyMonkey for data collection because I required a lot of adult participation within this, so that would be the teachers and the parents of these children. They were asked to complete an electronic survey on SurveyMonkey, taking a look at how much homework did they do, how much did they participate, and answering the questions there on a weekly basis. And also for the children in my experimental group, I asked them to kind of use a poster board and stickers almost as like an extrinsic motivation to continue exercising, and would kind of track their progress of physical activity throughout the week. So from From looking at the data, I realized, well, first I'll dive into the equation first here. So I compared academic success of the sedentary children to the physical children, and it was graphed, and I'll show you the graph here in a minute, but the equation I created kind of just took each part of the weighted components and multiplied it by essentially a percentage to give me a total of academic success that was between 0 and 1, 1 being more successfully academic compared to 0 being less. So results here. Results show that children who are physically active have a higher academic success rate. Physical activity versus academic readiness, as you can see on the graph here. Something I'd like to point out here at the beginning, you'll notice 15 to 30 minutes academic, or 15 to 30 minutes of physical activity increases their academic readiness greatly, more so than 30 to 40 minutes. You kind of notice levels within these children. So just getting a little bit of exercise is going to dramatically increase their academic readiness score, academic intelligence, and then it kind of will plateau out. And then again, around 40 to 45 minutes, you'll notice a more sharper increase, and then you'll notice it plateaus because obviously these kids aren't going to exercise or run around for 5 hours a day and just be super geniuses. So when looking at additional literature, I think it's important to discuss that some research has been done in this field. One of the papers I looked at was Wu and Chain. He looked at what's called memory recall within children with obesity, and he found out that obese children do show working memory deficits compared to the others in his group. And Reed, who was another researcher I looked at something called fluid intelligence. So fluid intelligence looked at logic and identifying patterns, solving new problems, and he looked at children who did daily physical education versus children who did not. And he found out that the increase in physical activity had a positive correlation to the children's ability to solve these new problems. Some of the examples would be like, doing a puzzle or identifying a pattern within something more, appropriate for their cognitive levels. So future direction, where do I see this going? So I think this research would be most beneficial in supporting physical activity within these school settings to strengthen their academic success. I think, we have the research now. I think we need to start advocating for it, and even I would say advocating for more physical education or more physical activity allowed in schools. The legislation, is always changing, and I would really, love to see some advocating on behalf of these children. And my references. Thank you.